Ethan squirmed uneasily, his fingers fumbling with his collar as he gazed across at Rachel in their favorite nook of the cafe. The gentle symphony of conversations and the soft clattering of cups and saucers enveloped them in a cocoon of warmth and intimacy. Rachel, his cherished girlfriend, took a slow, savoring sip of her cappuccino, her eyes gleaming with an inquisitive sparkle. "Rachel," Ethan began, his voice steady yet brimming with a mix of excitement and nervous energy, "I want you to meet my father. He's really looking forward to getting to know you." Rachel's eyes widened in a blend of surprise and joy. "Truly? That's amazing." When and where Ethan exhaled a breath he didn't realize he was holding, a smile of relief spreading across his face. "I've arranged for us to meet him at l'Aile Pouc, the exquisite French restaurant downtown, tomorrow evening." "l'Aile Pouc," Rachel echoed, her voice tinged with awe. "Isn't that the most luxurious restaurant in the city?" Ethan nodded, his eyes shining with delight. "Yes, it's the one." Rachel's face lit up with excitement and anticipation. "Absolutely. I'd love to. I can't wait to meet him." If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. As Ethan stepped away to take a call, Rachel hastily dialed her best friend, Hannah. "Hannah, you won't believe this. Ethan is taking me to l'Aile Pouc to meet his father," she exclaimed with breathless excitement. "Wow. That's phenomenal," Hannah responded, her voice brimming with genuine enthusiasm. "You must be ecstatic." "I am," Rachel replied, her tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "This means his family must be incredibly wealthy. I always knew Ethan had potential, but this just confirms it. Can you imagine marrying into such luxury?" Hannah giggled. "You're so lucky, Rachel. Make sure you make a great impression." "Oh, I will," Rachel said with determination. "I've always dreamed of marrying into wealth. Who wouldn't? The idea of being with someone poor, struggling to get by, just isn't for me." Hannah agreed without hesitation. "Absolutely. You deserve nothing but the best." On the day of the dinner, Hannah was adamant about joining Rachel. "I want to see this luxurious lifestyle you're about to step into," Hannah said with a playful smirk. Rachel, eager to flaunt her good fortune, agreed. When they arrived at l'Aile Pouc, Ethan was visibly startled to see Hannah. "I didn't expect you to bring company," he said, masking his surprise with a polite smile. Hannah insisted. Rachel replied nonchalantly. "I hope it's not an issue," Ethan nodded, though he felt a pang of unease. "Of course, the more the merrier." He handed Rachel a stunning bouquet of red roses. "These are for you," he said warmly. Rachel's face lit up, her earlier doubts momentarily forgotten. "Thank you, Ethan. They're absolutely gorgeous." As they entered the restaurant, Rachel was immediately captivated by its opulence. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a warm glow over the elegantly set tables adorned with exquisite centerpieces. The enticing aroma of gourmet cuisine filled the air. "This place is incredible," Hannah whispered to Rachel, who nodded, a swell of pride filling her chest. They were escorted to their table, and as they settled in, Rachel's curiosity got the better of her. "Ethan, when will your father be joining us?" Ethan glanced around the room before looking back at Rachel. "He's already here." Rachel looked around, puzzled, where Ethan pointed to a corner of the room where a man in a janitor's uniform was diligently sweeping the floor. "There he is." Rachel's face fell in shock. "You must be joking," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "No, Rachel, that's my father," Ethan said calmly. Hannah stifled a laugh. "This has to be a prank, right?" Rachel's expression turned to one of anger and confusion. "Why didn't you tell me your father is a janitor?" Ethan's gaze hardened. "Does it matter? He's a kind and hard-working man, and that's what's important." Rachel's frustration boiled over. "Of course it matters. How could you embarrass me like this?" Ethan sighed, his patience wearing thin. "Embarrass you? This dinner is about meeting my father, not about your pride." Rachel stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't believe you would do this to me. I thought you came from money, Ethan. His voice calm yet firm, responded, I never lied to you. You assumed. Hannah, trying to ease the tension, interjected, Rachel, maybe you should sit down and give this a chance. Rachel shot her a fierce glare. No, Hannah, I won't sit here and be humiliated. Ethan stood up as well, his voice unwavering. My father works hard and deserves respect. If you can't see past his job, then maybe you're not who I thought you were. Rachel's face flushed with anger. I don't need this. I deserve better. As she turned to leave, George, who had overheard the argument, approached the table. He extended his hand to greet Rachel, a kind smile on his face. Good evening, Rachel. I'm George, Ethan's father. Rachel recoiled, glaring at the hand offered to her. How dare you touch me, you filthy janitor, she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. George's smile faltered, but he remained composed. I'm sorry if I've upset you. Rachel's anger flared even more. Upset? You and your son are nothing but deceitful, lowly scum. Ethan lied to me, pretending to be someone he's not just to get close to me. Pathetic. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady but strained. Rachel, that's not true. I never pretended to be anything I'm not. George raised a hand to stop Ethan. Let her speak. Hannah, sensing an opportunity to calm things down, tried again. Rachel, maybe you should hear Ethan out. There might be more to this than you think. Rachel shot Hannah a withering look. Oh, shut up, Hannah. You're just as bad, always defending these low lives. She turned back to Ethan, her eyes blazing with fury. You think giving me some cheap flowers and a fancy dinner would hide the fact that you're nothing but a poor, pathetic loser? Look at your father, a janitor, and you had the nerve to let me think you were rich. In a fit of rage, Rachel grabbed the bouquet of roses Ethan had given her earlier and threw them to the ground. She stomped on them, crushing the delicate petals under her heel. This is what I think of your stupid flowers, she sneered. George, maintaining his composure, said quietly, I'm sorry you feel that way, Rachel. My son and I may not have the wealth you desire, but we have integrity. Ethan, feeling a mix of disappointment and relief, turned to Rachel one last time. I'm sorry you can't see what truly matters. Goodbye, Rachel. As Rachel stormed out of the restaurant, Ethan felt a weight lift off his shoulders. George placed a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. You did the right thing, Ethan. It's better to know her true colors now than later. Hannah, despite the tension, stayed by Ethan's side. You're better off without her, Ethan. You deserve someone who values you for who you are, not what you have. Ethan nodded, grateful for the support of his father and friend. Though the evening had turned out far differently than he had hoped, he felt a newfound clarity about what truly mattered in life. Ethan's face paled with hurt and disbelief. Rachel, why are you doing this? What changed? Is it just because my father works as a janitor? Rachel laughed bitterly. Of course, you think the son of a janitor has any right to be with someone like me. You should know your place. She stepped closer to Ethan, her voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. From now on, you will address me as Miss. I don't want anyone to think we're on the same level. George, trying to mediate, spoke gently. Rachel, please, let's not escalate this. We're all just people trying to live our lives. Rachel whirled on him, her face twisted with disdain. Shut up. You have no right to speak to me. You're nothing but a dirty janitor. Stay out of this. Ethan's eyes hardened. That's enough, Rachel. You've made your point, Rachel smirked. Good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have better things to do than waste my time with you and your pathetic family. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the restaurant, leaving behind a stunned silence. Ethan stood there, grappling with the whirlwind of emotion swirling within him. His father, George, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Son, you need to go after her, explain that you love her. Taking a deep breath, Ethan nodded and rushed out of the restaurant, his heart pounding. he spotted Rachel and Hannah a short distance away, their voices carried by the evening breeze. "I can't believe I wasted so much time with Ethan," Rachel was saying. "At least I found out he's a pauper before it was too late," Hannah laughed. "You're right. We need to find someone who's actually rich. Maybe that new club downtown." "Definitely," Rachel agreed. "It's full of wealthy men. No more time wasters like Ethan." Ethan felt a mixture of sadness and clarity wash over him as he listened to their conversation. The woman he thought he loved was revealing a side he could no longer ignore. He took a deep breath and walked up to them, his heart heavy but resolute. "Rachel, I came to tell you that I loved you, but it's clear you don't feel the same way. I deserve someone who values me for who I am, not for my financial status." Rachel turned, her expression a mix of surprise and disdain. "Ethan, save your speech." "I'm done with you," Ethan nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Goodbye, Rachel. I hope you find what you're looking for." He turned and walked away, his steps growing steadier with each stride. Hannah watched him go, a flicker of regret crossing her face. She turned to Rachel, who was already on her phone, looking up directions to the new club. "Are you sure about this?" Hannah asked hesitantly. Rachel scoffed. "Absolutely. I have no time for losers." Ethan returned to the restaurant, where George was waiting for him. "I'm proud of you," son George said quietly. "It takes strength to walk away from someone who doesn't see your worth." Ethan smiled, feeling a new sense of peace. "Thanks, Dad. Let's go home." As they left the restaurant, Ethan knew that while his heart was bruised, he had made the right decision. He was ready to find someone who loved him for who he truly was, and he was grateful to have his father by his side. Ethan's stomach twisted painfully as the cutting words reached his ears. Summoning his resolve, he hurried forward and grabbed Rachel's arm. "Rachel, please wait." She wrenched her arm away, her eyes flashing with disdain. "Don't touch me with your filthy hands." "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs?" Ethan's face crumpled with hurt. "Rachel, I love you. We've been together for so long. Why are you ending this over my father's job?" Rachel let out a bitter laugh. "Love? Sure, I had some feelings for you, but mostly I loved the idea of your money. Without that, what do you have to offer?" Ethan's heart sank. "Is that all I was to you? Just a potential bank account?" Obviously, Rachel retorted sharply. "Why would I settle for anything less? Now get out of my way." In a desperate attempt to salvage their relationship, Ethan pleaded, "Rachel, please, we can work through this. My love for you is genuine." Rachel sneered. "Work through what? Your poverty? No thanks. Here, why don't you prove your worth with that?" She kicked over a nearby trash can, its contents spilling across the sidewalk. "Pick that up," she commanded. "Maybe then I'll reconsider." Ethan stared at the scattered trash, his heart heavy. After a moment's hesitation, he slowly knelt down and began to pick up the garbage. Rachel and Hannah watched, laughing maliciously. "Look at him," Rachel mocked. "A pathetic janitor, just like his father." As Ethan picked up the last piece of trash, he looked up at Rachel, hope glimmering in his eyes. "Can we go back to how things were now?" Rachel laughed icily. "Are you dreaming? You think I'd want to be with you after this?" "Here," she said, pulling out a bill from her purse. "A tip for the cleanup." She tossed the money at his feet, her cruel laughter echoing in his ears. Ethan's shoulders slumped in humiliation as he picked up the bill. "I guess I was wrong about you, Rachel," he said quietly. "You're damn right you were." Rachel snapped. "Now get lost." Hannah smirked. "Come on, Rachel. Let's go find some real men." Ethan watched them walk away, his heart breaking. George appeared beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "I saw everything, son. I'm sorry you had to go through that." Ethan nodded, fighting back tears. I didn't want to believe she could be so cruel." George sighed. "Sometimes people reveal their true selves when money is involved. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you have." Ethan looked at his father, the weight of realization settling in. "You're right, Dad. I need to find someone better." George smiled warmly. "You will, Ethan. And when you do, it will be worth all of this." As they walked back to the restaurant, Ethan felt a strange sense of relief. Despite the humiliation and heartbreak, he knew he was better off without Rachel. The experience had been painful, but it had also opened his eyes to the kind of person he truly needed in his life. He felt grateful for the clarity, even if it had come at a high emotional cost. Later that night, Rachel and Hannah made their way to an upscale bar in the city. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Determined to erase the evening's earlier embarrassment, Rachel scanned the room for potential targets. Over there, Hannah whispered, nodding towards a man at the bar. He looked well-dressed, exuding an air of wealth and confidence. Rachel straightened her dress, pushed her shoulders back, and sauntered over with an inviting smile. "Hi there," she greeted, her voice smooth and confident as she leaned slightly forward, ensuring he noticed her plunging neckline. The man turned his gaze, taking in her appearance. "Hello. Can I buy you a drink?" "Sure," Rachel replied, sliding onto the bar stool next to him, crossing her legs slowly to reveal just enough of her thigh. "I'm Rachel. By the way, nice to meet you, Rachel." "I'm Miguel." As the evening progressed, Rachel skillfully steered the conversation towards Miguel's profession, all the while maintaining a flirtatious demeanor. She occasionally touched his arm, laughed at his jokes, and played with her hair, her eyes sparkling with interest. "So, Miguel," she asked, her voice dropping to a seductive tone. "What do you do?" "I own a chain of restaurants," Miguel said, sipping his drink, clearly captivated by her charm. "One of them is quite well known, Lael Pook." Rachel's eyes lit up with interest. "Really? That's impressive." "Lael Pook is such a prestigious place," she purred, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her glass. Miguel smiled modestly. "Thank you. It's been a lot of hard work." Rachel leaned in closer, her interest piqued. "I've heard amazing things about it. What's it like running such a successful business?" Miguel's eyes sparkled as he began to share stories of his entrepreneurial journey, detailing the challenges and triumphs he had faced. Rachel listened intently, her mind racing with possibilities. As the night wore on, Rachel's thoughts were a mix of ambition and strategy. She saw Miguel as a potential gateway to the lifestyle she craved. Her previous encounter with Ethan and his father seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by the allure of new prospects. Miguel, seemingly unaware of Rachel's true intentions, continued to enjoy her company. The more she learned about him, the more she crafted her responses to align with his interests and values. She painted herself as someone deeply appreciative of hard work and success, subtly hinting at her desire for a life of luxury. Eventually, Miguel suggested they move to a quieter corner of the bar, where they could continue their conversation more privately. Rachel agreed eagerly, her mind set on securing his interest. As they settled into a cozy booth, Miguel ordered another round of drinks, and Rachel knew she had to make the most of this opportunity. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, Ethan and George shared a quiet meal. They talked about the future, about finding someone who truly valued them for who they were, not for what they had. The pain of the evening began to fade, replaced by a sense of hope and determination. In the upscale bar, Rachel continued her pursuit, weaving her charm around Miguel, determined to turn this chance encounter into something more substantial. She was willing to do whatever it took to leave behind the humiliation she had faced and step into the life she believed she deserved. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and by the end of the night, Rachel had successfully charmed Miguel. They left the bar together, her arm linked through his, and spent the night at his luxurious penthouse. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the curtains, Rachel lay in bed, feeling triumphant. She reached for her phone and called Hannah. "Hannah, guess what? I met this amazing guy last night. He's rich, owns Lael Pook, and we spent the night together." Hannah's voice crackled with excitement over the phone. No way. That's incredible, Rachel. You move fast, Rachel laughed. I know, right? And I have the perfect idea to rub it in Ethan's face. Let's go to Leilpook for dinner tonight. I'll show him how quickly I can find someone better. Hannah chuckled. That sounds perfect. It'll be fun to see his reaction. Rachel ended the call and dialed Miguel. He answered on the second ring. Good morning, Rachel. Good morning, Miguel. I was thinking, how about we have dinner at Leilpook tonight? I'd love to see your restaurant. There was a brief hesitation on the other end of the line. I have a meeting this evening that might run late, but you can go ahead. I'll join you as soon as I can. Rachel smiled. That's fine. I understand. I'll see you there. After hanging up, she called Hannah again to confirm their plans. Hannah, it's all set. We're having dinner at Leilpook tonight. Great. I can't wait to see Ethan's face when he sees you with someone new, Hannah said, her voice brimming with anticipation. The evening arrived quickly. Rachel and Hannah, dressed to the nines, made their way to Leilpook. As they entered the restaurant, Rachel's eyes scanned the room, hoping to spot Ethan or his father. The maitre d' showed them to their table, and Rachel settled in, feeling a sense of satisfaction. This is perfect, she whispered to Hannah. Ethan will see that I've moved on to someone better. Hannah grinned. Absolutely, and Miguel sounds like a catch. As they sipped their drinks and chatted, a young waitress approached their table with the menu. She froze for a moment as she recognized Rachel. Gathering her courage, she spoke up. Hi, Rachel. It's been a while. Rachel looked up, her face twisting with disdain. Do I know you? The waitress hesitated, then nodded. I'm Emily, Ethan's sister. I recognized you from a photo he has of the two of you together. Rachel's eyes flashed with irritation. Oh, really? She said coldly. Well, that's ancient history now. Emily, undeterred, pulled out her phone to show Rachel the photo. See? This is you and my brother. Rachel snatched the phone out of Emily's hand and, without a second thought, flung it across the room. The phone clattered to the floor, its screen cracking. I told you I don't care about Ethan. We broke up. Emily's face turned red with anger and embarrassment. She opened her mouth to retort, but before she could speak, George appeared beside her. He placed a calming hand on her shoulder. Emily, that's enough. Rachel's expression shifted from irritation to smugness as she looked at George. See, even your father knows when to keep quiet. George, maintaining his composure, replied softly. Rachel, I won't let you treat my daughter this way. We came here to enjoy our evening, just like you. Rachel rolled her eyes. Whatever. We're here to meet someone important, not deal with you. Just then, Ethan walked into the restaurant, immediately spotting the commotion. He hurried over, concern etched on his face. What's going on here? He asked, his gaze shifting from his sister to Rachel. Emily, on the verge of tears, pointed to her broken phone. She threw my phone, Ethan. Ethan's face hardened as he turned to Rachel. Why would you do that? Rachel sneered. Because I'm done with your pathetic family and their drama. She grabbed her purse, ready to leave. Come on, Hannah, we're done here. But before they could walk away, Miguel entered the restaurant, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. What's happening here? He asked, walking over to Rachel. She turned to him, attempting to regain her composure. Miguel, it's nothing. Just dealing with some trash from my past. Miguel's expression turned stern. Rachel, I don't tolerate this kind of behavior. Apologize to Emily. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. Apologize? To her, Miguel nodded firmly. Yes, now. Rachel stood frozen for a moment, then turned to Emily with a forced smile. I'm sorry, she said through gritted teeth. Emily nodded, still hurt but appreciating the gesture. Miguel turned to Ethan and George. I apologize for this. Please, let's continue our evening without further incidents. Ethan nodded, his respect for Miguel growing. Thank you. Rachel, seething with anger. whispered to Hannah. "Let's just leave." "This isn't worth it." As they exited, Miguel turned to Ethan and George. "Please, dinner is on me tonight. I hope this can make up for what happened." Ethan smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Miguel. That means a lot." The rest of the evening proceeded without incident, the tension gradually dissipating as they enjoyed their meal. Rachel's true colors had been exposed, and Ethan felt a sense of closure, ready to move forward with his life. Rachel smirked, feeling a surge of triumph. "You should teach your daughter how to respect customers." George looked at Rachel, his expression unreadable. "My apologies for any inconvenience," he said calmly. "Emily, go help another table." Emily shot Rachel a furious glance before walking away, her eyes welling up with tears. George turned his attention back to Rachel. "Is there anything else you need, Miss Rachel?" Rachel leaned back in her chair, her demeanor haughty. "Just make sure our drinks are perfect. And remember, my new boyfriend owns this place. I can have you both fired if you don't do your jobs properly." George raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Your boyfriend owns Lael Pook." "That's right," Rachel replied smugly. "Miguel. He told me all about it." George's eyes widened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I see. I'll make sure everything goes smoothly for you tonight." He turned to leave, but Rachel wasn't done. "And another thing," she called out, her voice loud and haughty, "make sure that fat little waitress knows her place. She's lucky to even have a job here." George's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I'll take care of it." As he walked back to the bar, Emily approached him, her eyes filled with tears. "Dad, are you okay?" George sighed, his shoulders heavy with the weight of the confrontation. "I'm fine, Emily. Just keep doing your job." "Don't let her get to you." Emily nodded, but her heart ached. She returned to the floor, her mind swirling with a mix of anger and humiliation. George watched her go, his own heart heavy with worry and frustration. Back at the table, Rachel and Hannah continued their conversation, their laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the tension that had just filled the air. Rachel felt a sense of twisted satisfaction, believing she had won another small victory. As the evening progressed, the restaurant filled with more patrons, and the hum of conversation grew louder. But for Rachel, none of it mattered. Her mind was set on one thing, proving to everyone, especially Ethan, that she had moved on to something better. As the night wore on, Miguel finally arrived. He approached Rachel and Hannah's table with a charming smile. "Sorry I'm late, ladies. Business ran a bit longer than expected." Rachel's face lit up as she introduced him to Hannah. "Miguel, this is my best friend, Hannah." Miguel shook hands with Hannah, his demeanor warm and friendly. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Hannah." Rachel couldn't wait to flaunt her connection to Miguel in front of the entire restaurant. She gestured grandly around the room. "Miguel, everything here looks perfect. You must be so proud of this place." Miguel nodded, his smile genuine. "Thank you, Rachel. We've worked hard to make it special." Just then, Ethan walked into the restaurant with George. Rachel's eyes narrowed as she watched them take a seat. She leaned closer to Miguel, ensuring her voice carried across the room. "Miguel, can you believe some people think they can act superior just because of their job titles? It's pathetic." Miguel looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" Rachel pointed subtly in Ethan and George's direction. "Those two over there. They were rude to me earlier. George even had the audacity to imply I should be more respectful." Miguel's expression darkened as he glanced at Ethan and George. "I'll handle it," he said firmly. He stood up and walked over to their table. "Excuse me, gentlemen. Is there a problem here?" Ethan looked up, surprised. "No, Miguel, everything's fine. We were just having dinner." George nodded in agreement, his face calm. "Yes, we're just enjoying our evening." Miguel's eyes flicked back to Rachel, who was watching with a smirk. Rachel mentioned there was an issue with respect. "I want to make sure all my customers are treated properly." Ethan's face hardened. Respect goes both ways, Miguel. Your girlfriend has been very disrespectful to my family. Miguel's gaze shifted back to Rachel, his eyes narrowing. Is this true? Rachel's smirk faded slightly, but she held her ground. I only demanded the respect I deserve. Your staff needs to learn their place. Miguel's face grew stern. Rachel, if you're going to be with me, you need to treat everyone with kindness and respect. That includes my employees. Rachel's face reddened with anger and embarrassment. Are you taking their side? Miguel nodded firmly. Absolutely. My staff is like family to me. If you can't respect them, then we have a problem. Rachel stood up abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything I've done to be with you. Miguel sighed. Rachel, if you can't see the importance of treating people well, then maybe this isn't going to work out. Rachel stared at him, her eyes blazing with fury. Fine. If that's how you feel, I'll find someone who appreciates me. She stormed out of the restaurant, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Miguel turned back to Ethan and George, his expression apologetic. I'm sorry for any trouble she caused. Please enjoy your evening on the house. Ethan nodded gratefully. Thank you, Miguel. That means a lot. As Miguel walked back to his table, Ethan and George shared a look of relief. Well, that was something, Ethan said quietly. George smiled, his heart lightened. Yes, it was, but it's a reminder that we're better off without people like Rachel in our lives. Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of closure. You're right, Dad. We deserve better. As they continued their meal, the tension of the evening faded, replaced by a newfound sense of peace and hope for the future. Meanwhile, George kept a close eye on Rachel and Hannah, ensuring their service was impeccable despite the earlier confrontation. He knew it was important to maintain professionalism, no matter how difficult the situation. As the night wore on, Rachel's patience began to wear thin. She checked her phone, noting that Miguel's meeting must be running late. He should be here soon, she assured Hannah, though a hint of uncertainty crept into her voice. Just then, the door to the restaurant opened, and Rachel's heart skipped a beat. She turned, expecting to see Miguel, but instead it was a group of business people arriving for dinner. Rachel forced a smile, trying to mask her disappointment. Minutes turned into an hour, and still there was no sign of Miguel. Rachel's irritation grew. She felt the eyes of other patrons on her, imagining their silent judgments. Where is he? She muttered under her breath, her fingers drumming impatiently on the table. Hannah, sensing Rachel's growing frustration, tried to console her. He'll be here soon. Maybe his meeting is just running late. Just then, Emily approached their table with a tray of drinks, her hands steady, but her eyes betrayed her nervousness. Here are your drinks, she said, placing them carefully on the table. Rachel exchanged a sly glance with Hannah before turning her gaze back to Emily. Thank you, she said sweetly, but there was a dangerous edge to her tone. Emily started to walk away, but Rachel's voice stopped her. Wait, she said, her tone suddenly harsh. I want to apologize for earlier. Emily turned back, her face a mix of surprise and caution. Apologize? Yes, Rachel said, standing up and taking a step closer to Emily. I was rude, and I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? Emily blinked, unsure of how to respond. I guess so. Great, Rachel said with a saccharine smile. Here, let me give you a hug. Before Emily could react, Rachel grabbed the tray of drinks and, with a swift motion, tipped them over Emily's head. The cold liquid drenched her, soaking her uniform and making her gasp in shock. The restaurant fell silent as patrons turned to see what had happened. Emily stood there, dripping and humiliated, her eyes wide with disbelief. Hannah burst into laughter, and Rachel joined in, her laugh loud and cruel. Oh, look at you. "You're a mess, George," who had been watching from a distance, rushed over. "What is going on here?" Rachel smirked, wiping a tear of laughter from her eye. "Just teaching your daughter a lesson." George's face turned red with anger. "This is unacceptable. You can't treat people like this." Rachel crossed her arms, her expression defiant. "I can do whatever I want, and if you don't like it, maybe you should find another job. Remember, my boyfriend owns this place." George took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. "Emily, go get cleaned up." "I'll handle this," Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face as she hurried away. George turned back to Rachel, his eyes blazing with anger. "You need to leave." Rachel raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "Leave? Why should I? We're paying customers." George's voice was firm. "Not anymore. Your behavior is unacceptable, and you are no longer welcome here." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "You think you can kick me out? You're just a dirty waiter. You have no right." George stood his ground, his voice unwavering. "I am the manager here, and I have every right to remove anyone who disrupts the peace and mistreats my staff." At that moment, Miguel walked into the restaurant. He immediately sensed the tension and hurried over to the table. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking between George and Rachel. Rachel turned to Miguel, her voice a mix of anger and desperation. "Miguel, this man is trying to kick me out. Can you believe the nerve?" Miguel looked at George, who was standing tall and resolute. "Miguel, your girlfriend has been causing a scene and has mistreated my daughter and other staff members. I've asked her to leave." Miguel's face hardened as he looked at Rachel. "Is this true?" Rachel stammered. "Miguel, I was just having some fun. They were being disrespectful first." Miguel sighed deeply, his expression one of disappointment. "Rachel, I can't condone this kind of behavior. George is right. You need to leave." Rachel's face twisted with rage and betrayal. "You're taking their side? Over me?" Miguel nodded. "Yes, because this place is built on respect and hard work. If you can't understand that, then you don't belong here." Rachel, her face flushed with fury, grabbed her purse and stormed out, shouting, "You'll regret this." Miguel turned to George, his expression regretful. "I'm deeply sorry for her behavior. Please, let's make sure the rest of the evening goes smoothly for everyone." George nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. "Thank you, Miguel. We'll do our best." As the evening progressed, the atmosphere in the restaurant returned to its warm and welcoming state. George and Emily continued to provide exceptional service, their spirits lifted by the support from Miguel and the other patrons. Ethan, having witnessed the entire incident, felt a sense of closure and pride in his family's strength and integrity. When the night finally came to an end, George and Emily stood together, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. "We did it, Dad," Emily said quietly. "We stood up for ourselves." George smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "Yes, we did, and we'll continue to do so. No one can take away our dignity." Ethan joined them, wrapping an arm around his father and sister. "We're stronger together, and we'll always have each other's backs." As they left the restaurant, the family felt a renewed sense of unity and determination, knowing that they could face any challenge as long as they stood together. Just then, the door to the restaurant swung open, and Miguel walked in. Rachel's expression shifted instantly, her eyes lighting up as if she had found a lifeline. "Miguel," she exclaimed, rushing over to him and wrapping her arms around his neck. Miguel looked confused but hugged her back. "Rachel, what's going on here?" George remained calm, addressing Miguel directly. "Good evening, Mr. Miguel. There's been an incident with your girlfriend." Rachel interrupted, her voice sweet and persuasive. "Miguel, this man is being incredibly rude. He's trying to kick us out for no reason." George stood there, watching the scene unfold with a calm expression. Miguel's eyes widened when he saw George, and he immediately stepped forward, his demeanor respectful. "Mr. George." Rachel's eyes widened in shock. "Why are you being so formal with him, Miguel?" "He's just a waiter." Miguel shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "No, Rachel. George is the owner of Lael Pook." Rachel's face turned pale. "What? But you told me you own this place." Miguel chuckled softly. "I'm the manager, Rachel. George is my boss." George remained calm, addressing Miguel. "Thank you, Miguel. There's been a misunderstanding, but it's under control now." At that moment, Ethan entered the restaurant, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit. He walked briskly toward the group, his face set with determination. "Dad, you called about an issue with Rachel causing trouble here. I came as soon as I could." George nodded, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Yes, son. Rachel has been causing a disturbance and treating our staff poorly. I had to ask her to leave." Ethan turned to Rachel, his eyes filled with disappointment. "Rachel, why would you do this?" Rachel's face contorted with desperation. "Ethan, they were all against me. They treated me horribly. You have to believe me." George sighed, shaking his head. "That's not true, Rachel. You poured drinks over my daughter and insulted her in front of everyone. You disrespected our staff and our customers." Rachel looked to Miguel, her eyes pleading. "Miguel, please. You have to help me. They're lying." Miguel gently pushed her hand away. "Rachel, you need to take responsibility for your actions. I can't help you if you keep denying what you've done." Rachel's desperation turned to anger. "You're all against me. You set me up." Ethan took a step forward, his voice firm. "Rachel, enough. You need to leave. This behavior is unacceptable." Rachel glared at him, her eyes blazing. "You can't do this to me." Ethan stood his ground, his expression unwavering. "Yes, I can, and I am." Rachel's face twisted with fury. "You'll regret this, all of you." She spun on her heel and stormed out of the restaurant, the door slamming shut behind her. The tension in the room slowly dissipated as the patrons resumed their conversations and the staff went back to their duties. Ethan turned to George and Miguel, his expression softening. "Thank you both for handling this. I'm sorry for any trouble she caused." George smiled reassuringly. "No need to apologize, son. You did the right thing." Miguel nodded in agreement. "We all have to stand up for what's right. Now let's make sure the rest of the evening goes smoothly."
Ethan sighed, a weight lifting off his shoulders. "You're right. Let's move on." He turned to Emily, who had been standing nearby, still visibly shaken. "Emily, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Are you okay?"
Emily managed a small smile, her eyes still glistening with tears. "I'm okay, Ethan. Thank you for standing up for me." Ethan gave her a supportive hug. "Of course. Family sticks together." As the night continued, the atmosphere in the restaurant returned to its warm and welcoming state. George, Ethan, and Miguel worked together to ensure the patrons were happy and the staff felt appreciated. The incident with Rachel became a reminder of the importance of integrity and respect in their lives. When the evening finally came to a close, George gathered his family and Miguel for a quiet moment. "We faced a challenge tonight, but we handled it with dignity and strength. I'm proud of each of you." Ethan nodded, his heart filled with gratitude. "We're stronger together. This experience has shown me what truly matters." Miguel smiled warmly. "Indeed, we've all learned something valuable tonight." As they left the restaurant, the bond between them felt stronger than ever. They knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together with unwavering support and love for one another. Rachel's face was painted with a mix of panic and desperation as she glanced around the room, catching the judgmental stares of the other patrons. Her heart pounded in her chest, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Turning back to Ethan, her voice softened to a tender plea. "Ethan, please, let's just talk this through. I'm deeply sorry. I never meant for things to get so out of hand." Ethan's eyes blazed with anger. "Sorry? After what you did? You embarrassed my sister and disrespected my father in front of everyone." Rachel took a hesitant step closer, her hand trembling as she reached for his arm. I know. I was completely wrong. But Ethan, I love you so much. Please, let's not let this be the end." Ethan pulled his arm away, his face twisted in disbelief. "Love? You call this love? All you ever care about is money, Rachel. That's all you ever wanted." Tears welled up in Rachel's eyes, spilling down her cheeks. "No, Ethan, that's not true. I love you for who you are, not for what you have." Ethan's shoulders slumped, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. "If that were true, you wouldn't have treated my family the way you did. You wouldn't have made a scene just because you felt entitled." Rachel looked around desperately, her voice barely a whisper. "Wait, your family owns this restaurant?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, we do." Rachel's expression shifted, her eyes pleading. "Ethan, you have to believe me. I didn't mean what I said. I was just trying to test your love for me." Ethan laughed bitterly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Test me? You think you can walk into my family's life, treat them like dirt, and expect to be forgiven? You're delusional." Rachel reached for his hand again, but he stepped back. "Ethan, please give me another chance. I promise I'll change. I'll make it up to you." Ethan's eyes filled with sadness and resignation. "No, Rachel, I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who only values me for my money." Rachel's sobs grew louder, her heart breaking. "Ethan, please. I'm begging you. Don't leave me." Ethan shook his head, his decision final. "It's over, Rachel. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it's not with me." Rachel's legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. "Ethan, no, please." George, who had been silently watching, stepped forward and placed a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Let's go, son." Ethan nodded, turning his back on Rachel, who remained on the floor, pleading. As he walked away, the weight of his decision settled heavily on him, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Outside the restaurant, Ethan inhaled deeply, the cool night air filling his lungs with a sense of clarity. George stood beside him, his steady presence a source of comfort. "You did the right thing, Ethan," he said softly. Ethan nodded, his movements slow and heavy. "I know, Dad. It hurts so much." George placed a reassuring hand on his son's back. "I know it does, but you deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you have."
Inside, Rachel slowly rose, wiping away her tears. She glanced around, feeling the piercing gaze of pity and judgment from the other diners. Humiliated and regretful, she grabbed her purse and stumbled towards the exit. Her mind raced with sorrow and regret, the weight of her actions crashing down on her. As she stepped outside, she saw Ethan and George engaged in a quiet conversation. For a fleeting moment, she considered running to Ethan, begging for another chance, but something held her back. She realized she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. With a final, heart-wrenching sob, she turned and disappeared into the night.
Ethan watched her go, a whirlwind of sadness and relief swirling inside him. "I really thought she loved me, Dad," he admitted, his voice tinged with disbelief. George nodded, understanding etched in his features. "Sometimes we see what we want to see. But now you know the truth, and you can move forward." Ethan sighed deeply, his gaze drifting to the stars. "I guess so. It just feels like a part of me is missing." George smiled gently, his eyes warm. "That part will heal, son. And when it does, you'll be stronger for it." The two men stood in silence for a moment, the cool night air wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Inside the restaurant, the hum of activity continued, but for Ethan, the world seemed quieter, more focused. He had faced a hard truth and emerged on the other side, ready to seek a love that was genuine and sincere. As they walked to their car, Ethan felt a sense of peace beginning to settle over him. The road ahead might be uncertain, but with his family by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the gripping story of Ethan and Rachel and their dramatic showdown at Pook. Let's dive into some key takeaways from this tale, especially focusing on Rachel's character and the lessons we can learn from her actions.
Rachel's behavior serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of valuing money over people and looking down on others based on their financial status. She was so consumed by the wealth and status she believed Ethan possessed that she completely overlooked who he truly was. Her actions, fueled by greed and a desire for luxury, ultimately led to her downfall. What stood out the most was how she treated those she perceived as beneath her, like Emily and George. Her disdain for people she deemed less wealthy was not only toxic, but also deeply harmful. This attitude isolated her and revealed her true colors when she faced adversity.
Ethan's decision to walk away from Rachel was a powerful moment. It highlighted that love and relationships built on superficial desires are destined to crumble. He realized that true love is about valuing a person for who they are, not for what they have. So what can we take away from this? Money and status are fleeting, but how we treat others defines our character. Respect and kindness transcend wealth, and true connections are built on genuine care, not financial gain. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. And leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about the themes we discussed. Until next time, remember to value people for who they are, not for what they have. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the gripping story of Ethan and Rachel and their dramatic showdown at Pook. Let's dive into some key takeaways from this tale, especially focusing on Rachel's character and the lessons we can learn from her actions. Rachel's behavior serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of valuing money over people and looking down on others based on their financial status. She was so consumed by the wealth and status she believed Ethan possessed that she completely overlooked who he truly was. Her actions, fueled by greed and a desire for luxury, ultimately led to her downfall. What stood out the most was how she treated those she perceived as beneath her, like Emily and George. Her disdain for people she deemed less wealthy was not only toxic but also deeply harmful. This attitude isolated her and revealed her true colors when she faced adversity. Ethan's decision to walk away from Rachel was a powerful moment. It highlighted that love and relationships built on superficial desires are destined to crumble. He realized that true love is about valuing a person for who they are, not for what they have. So what can we take away from this? Money and status are fleeting, but how we treat others defines our character. Respect and kindness transcend wealth, and true connections are built on genuine care, not financial gain. What did you learn from this story? How will you apply these lessons in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear about one thing you've learned and plan to bring into practice. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content. Until next time, remember to value people for who they are, not for what they have.